By midsummer, ground elder can be a real problem in most herbaceous borders, and particularly in countryside gardens where it tends to invade from the surrounding countryside. And ground elder can be one of the most difficult and problematic perennial weeds to get rid of. Here in this mixed herbaceous border, we've got quite an infestation of ground elder, and some of it has even run to seed. You see these flower heads. These are little clusters of white flowers earlier in the season, and these, if you let it, are going to mean that this plant, as well as running by root runners, is going to seed all over. So the first thing to do before you start worrying about anything else is to deadhead all this seed and bag it up ready for clearance. Okay, it's going to do that. Cut off these flower heads and seed pods before any of this drops into this soil. Here's what they look like close up. You can see it's very quickly forming little seeds in every single one of those flower florets, and really it would be better to have not allowed it to get anywhere near this stage and to have deadheaded this as soon as you saw the flowers coming up, if you weren't able to cut it out or remove the actual ground elder plant that we're going to show you how to do in a minute. So the ground elder plants themselves, you need to get in with a small fork or a trowel like this and get under the roots. And the roots are very tough, fibrous little things. If you just pull the plants, they'll come away without lifting the actual root ball. But that's what you want to get out. You want to get the crown out with the roots, and these run by runners that run just over the soil or just under the soil. And you'll sometimes find that you'll have one plant that you've loosened and still feel that it's attached to something, and you want to get through and find out where that's run to and remove as much of those plants as possible.
And actually you can see that when I've got them up, I've broken through the roots.
Through the roots.
Any root that's left in is
going to reshoot, and that's why it's so difficult to get rid of.
The ground's
it's just
very
a matter
hard.
of working through. It basically is a job of attrition here. You are not likely, unless you completely empty this border, to remove every single bit of root. So what you'll need to do is just pick over it this week, and then in a week's time or so come back and have a look for any fresh growth. And if you find it, again with your fork, get in there and try and find the root and crown where that fresh growth is coming from and remove that. And by doing that throughout a season, you can gradually knock this ground elder back further and further, and eventually get rid of it over the course of 1 or 2 seasons.
Okay, while I've been digging here, I've noticed there's black matting down. Now this is something the previous owners must have done to try and get rid of the ground elder, and then they've planted herbaceous plants to it. But what has happened is where the matting's actually been down a long time and has rotted, and the ground elder's actually coming through the matting. So that ground elder's probably been there a long time. Previous owners had this house for 20-30 years, and they probably did this quite early on when they bought the property, because there's quite a bit of ground elder here, and most of the gardeners in fact got black matting down.
The only other 2 options you really got for trying to get rid of this ground elder would be to either use a spray or a touch weed killer. But again, in a mixed herbaceous border like this, that can be very difficult to do and target it just to get the ground elder. And even then, even with systemic weed killers, you tend to find that it doesn't get it all, and you've still got this fresh growth coming through continuously throughout the summer. So really is the best method is to just get that fork under the roots.
Oh, look at that huge clump that came up.
And keep it knocked back as best you can throughout the season.
In there as well. The roots of the ground elder are running through the other plants.
Well, that's the problem with it, isn't it? It does invades all the other plants that you've got, so you do end up having to replant quite a bit. Otherwise you've got no chance of getting the ground elder root that's tended to grow right through the crown of most of the herbaceous plants that are in here.
I feel the bag.
Need another bag.